Welcome back, guys, to the Logpose Lounge. Today we have Chris and myself, Adrian, to review the final chapter of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, Part 8, Jojolion. Chapter 110, The Radio Gaga Incident, Part 2. This is a very exciting moment for me, Chris. This is actually the first time I actually finished a part in manga form. Did you ever finish any of the other parts prior to this in manga form?
Not as they're like ongoing. Most of the time, I was just reading them after the fact they were done. So yeah, like you said, this is the first one I read weekly and also finished when it finished.
So why don't we start off how we start off the prior Jojolion reviews with the cover page. I actually thought this cover page was full of drip. Josuke having that amazing soft and wet design pattern all over his sailor suit. The drip was real. This it's not soft and wet anymore. This is soft and fire. What'd you think, Chris, of the cover page?
Oh yeah, definitely. And even the color spread where it's the pink and white. Same with the Yashiho part as well. Like not as much, but still it looks great. Seeing their abilities put into the color spread as well. You see the map on her side and on maybe bubbles on the flag.
Actually, we're gonna in more detail. Like I think I just only glanced at it for like a couple of seconds. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. But I actually like the background in Yashuho's design. Actually, you can actually make out JoJo in the background,
And Toro.
which is something that we're gonna talk about in this episode.
Okay.
Toro's always hiding.
And I assume like on the flag that Josuke has, those are all the stands that were in this arc, or a lot of them.
Well, not in the arc, but in the part itself.
Yes, that's what I
You
meant.
have vitamin C, space trucking. Yeah, it's a really cool. It's a really cool design pattern. I kind of wish for this final chapter that Araki could have colored some of the actual panels of the manga of the chapter.
I mean, they usually get colored manga versions afterwards.
Yeah, but it's not done by Araki himself. It's done by a different company.
Okay. But doesn't he like put in inputs like what color each person is?
Yes. I actually don't know. I'll have to look that up. But speaking of color and JoJo, let's get to the actual chapter. So back at it again. The guardrail creature is attacking Fumi-kun and Lucy Steele. It's the first 20 pages. It's just Fumi-kun versus the guardrail creature. And I thought we were actually going to see the creature himself.
Well, I think the creature is the guardrail.
I think you can. I have the page with me, but I think you can actually make out like some sort of like face in the guardrail.
Yeah, but it is
But
the
I,
guardrail. The guardrail is the thing attacking them.
yeah.
I don't think
I,
there's someone controlling the guardrail. I think it's just a guardrail that's alive.
well, I think it's a rock human, not like a rock. It's a rock human or a rock creature that or placed there to basically guard his plants. It just
Couldn't
takes on the
they
form of a guardrail.
just walk around it?
It can still call you. Remember, it lures people to the guardrail.
That's true. I just think it's not a very good protection.
Oh, this creature is responsible for killing many people. It's not dangerous.
I
It's
didn't say
okay.
it wasn't dangerous. I'm just saying it's a guardrail. It doesn't move. It just stays in one spot. If you don't go to that spot, you're not going to be attacked by it.
Yeah, but the fruit is past the point of the guardrail. It still draws you to the guardrail.
I'm just saying there's other ways to get to the fruit. You don't need to go by the guardrail.
That's besides the point. But anyway, I love the body horror in this entire chapter. Araki did a phenomenal job with the art, with just him displaying the gruesome gore. Almost thought it was a Berserk chapter.
Yeah, especially
So yeah,
when the driver comes out and starts like his guts are like hanging out.
that was nasty. I thought that was, for a second, I thought that was the actual Godwell creature. But yeah, so 20 chapters. It's basically Lucy trying to be devoured by the Godwell creature, and then there's like the zombie driver that comes out and starts attacking them. And then Lucy gets caught up with the guardrail creature, and she tells Fumikun, like, hey, you have a special power, you can do it, I believe in you. And then the big reveal happens. We find out that Fumikun is actually a JoJo. He's a Joestar. As we
Not
predicted
just a
last.
Joestar, Joseph Joestar.
And so, what were your thoughts
Obviously,
when that was dropped?
we talked about it last week. I was like,
Hmm.
oh, I guess Adrian was right, and I was okay with that part.
Hmm.
Seeing this version of Joseph do his thing, and then like I even like the hermit purple and the clankers Joseph
The
used in
Clinkers,
part
yes.
two. I was like, hey, that's a reference. Yeah,
I love how it was just total fan service for fans without just being it too forward. That makes sense.
yeah.
Hermit Purple, I like that the fact that yes, like we need the situation called for Joseph to use Hermit Purple.
Hmm.
I like that Araki did it like differently by just having Hermit Purple be a humanoid stand this time around, and it was able to throw punches instead of it just being, oh, it's a couple of vines.
Yeah, it was pretty useless in part three.
There's no useless stands. Okay, there's no prophetic cards in the tarot deck. Okay,
That's another video.
but it does have the unstoppable Hermit Purple.
Which he uses to smash the guardrail with the car, and then he punches the guardrail.
Half of the chapter is just basically them defeating the guardrail creature. So not much like really progresses besides them defeating the guardrail creature. But I do love how at the very end, Joseph's like, we gotta get out of here, Lucy. This is not good for us, and they just speed off. In classic Joseph fashion, he just runs away. He just drags Lucy. He's like, just like an old school cartoon where they just run away.
I mean, she was coughing up blood, so they had to get out. And they couldn't drive away since he broke the car, so.
But it's like also like another callback to Joseph. And as they're running off, they come across Toru, who's just chilling there, playing some Animal Crossing.
Yeah. Same clothes, everything.
Same clothes, just hasn't changed. Same age. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's like a big shocking like moment. But what'd you think of that panel?
I think it's kind of funny that he's planting it in a bucket and not some private orchard or something. Just look kind of funny.
My interpretation is like Toru actually is planting the Rohakaka there. Like he's actually like
Oh, so he's going around and like putting them down in the orchard.
yeah.
Gotcha. That would make sense.
So it's like the first time the Rohakaka like starts appearing in Morioh.
Hmm.
Because they did mention how the fruit is from New Guinea, and so Toru's probably the one responsible for bringing them over to Japan. And it kind of fits like ever since part four, how stand users are attracted to each other.
I could see that. I think Lucy even says later on how we were fated to meet and would do
Hmm.
this mission together with the Rokaka and stuff like that.
Speaking of mission, I love how Iraqi keep bringing that up, where he talked about doing a mission, especially in a man of his age when he's like in his 60s.
Hmm.
I felt like he was just preaching to the choir, telling everybody like, "Hey, you know what? This is my mission. JoJo's my mission. I'm doing this for the fans. I'm doing this for myself. It's art. I'm gonna keep doing this as long as I can, especially with the confirmation of part nine." I felt like Lucy was kind of like he was kind of saying that directly vicarious through her. Speaking of Lucy, she, in classic Iraqi form, she dies due to lung disease in New York City 3 years after the Radio Gaga incident.
When I first saw that, I thought, oh, I guess this is the end of the flashback, but then it goes on for 3 more pages. Also, re-looking at the pages now, I see where the sandal comes back into play,
Hmm.
which we'll get to that later.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I find it a bit humorous, just like it's so classic Iraqi. The way he just ends it, it's just like with a couple of panels, just describes events that happen afterwards. It's like, oh, Lucy Steele died due to lung disease. Joseph Joestar, he moved to New York City and got stuck there because, World War II happened.
Like I was like, yeah, it was the Americans' fault that this happened, that he couldn't go home. I'm kind of surprised Lucy didn't give him a job at the Speedwagon Foundation, right? Is that where she worked?
Yeah, that's what she worked.
Yeah, he's working at a casino now.
Yeah, it's really funny. Like he just worked at a casino, some bigwit at a casino.
Hmm.
Then he obviously married Susie Q. Then he had Holly, which is another parallel to part two and part three.
I do like George gets shafted again. No backstory for George.
No backstory for George.
Like, he was a guy, but who knows what he did or what he was like.
You also can see that George had like four other kids.
Yep.
Sorry, three other kids. I'm kind of curious to see who are they. And then they talk more about the Higatasha's household and just a random info drop. Oh yeah, the architect was friends with Jobin this entire time.
That whole page with their family felt so out of place to me. We're going through like the Joestar line, and then it's like, hey, the Higurashas, they were doing good with their fruit power. I mean, I guess they were in this part, but that's just seems a weird transition to go from that to this.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a very out of place transition. I thought this should have been saved for earlier back when. It just seems so out of place. It's like, yeah, let's bring back Jobin one more time. But Jobin's not in the picture at all. It's just his Lamborghini. Actually, Araki has some sort of sponsorship from the Lambo company. So
Yeah,
you gotta put Lamborghini in the manga, or you're not gonna get paid.
all your favorite rock humans, like that one guy with the no arms and legs, he's there. That's a weird shot. I don't know. Was there a Lamborghini rock human that I'm forgetting?
No, Jobin had a Lamborghini. Jobin had a
That's
Lambo.
why not put like Jobin in there?
If we put Jobin in there, it would just be too hot. We would all die because it would just produce too much heat, and that would cause the heat death of the universe. But no, he did have a Lamborghini. In one of the chapters, the Beetle fight, Jobin
Oh yeah,
raises the stakes, and he's like, "If you win, you can have my Lambo."
that's right.
But yeah, it just seems out of place, especially like the next cut we have Yasuho and Josuke together, and I think they just got back from visiting Holly because they seem like they're leaving the hospital or they're going to go visit her.
That's what it looks like to me as well. Because you had the mission permit, so I assume
Hmm.
they were visiting.
Yasuho is asking Josuke, although Kakaka is gone forever, is this finally over? And Josuke, in a brief panel, remembers the people that he lost, Kai, Mamazuku, and he's like, they might still exist somewhere in the
Kind of
land.
surprised that the string guy actually died.
Who?
The string
Mamazuku?
guy, yeah.
He was confirmed dead. He had that speech.
He died like 3 times in this part.
He had that final speech. And I'm like, yeah, he's dead now.
Just saying, one time he was just a ball of string on the ground, so it's possible.
It's
But I
possible.
guess this confirms that he did die.
Same thing with Kai. Like I thought she kind of like just passed out instead of dying.
I think that was pretty clear that she died.
God, Chris, no one's a master detective like you, okay? But yeah, going back to them talking about the fruits in the south, they were like, yeah, they might still exist in some land in the south, which I think it may be a call forward to part nine.
Oh, it definitely
Hmm.
is. Every time I heard land, I was like, oh, part time reference, maybe?
Jojo gets his land back, especially since there are no Kakas in Japan. It wouldn't make sense for them to have another part focus in Japan.
Yeah. If they want to continue, especially if they want to continue this storyline.
Hmm. Which we'll talk more about that later because we'll definitely talk more about Josuke and Yasuho
Mm-hmm.
a little bit later because the way their story ends, it seems like they will probably come back later on. And so we see Josefuma's mom appearing, and she's just missing for her. She's looking for her missing son, and Josuke's like, "Yeah, I'm not gonna tell her."
What is that? What she's doing there?
I mean, I don't think she was looking, but she's doesn't have that closure.
Oh, yeah. You skipped ahead, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Do you think like that was that's like I don't know, like I kind of felt bad for her.
Josuke only really cares about Holly. It
Like,
was kind of weird.
I'm a
It,
man who's like, yeah, like I have no memories, but I still have memories of Holly. She's my real mom. Fuck
especially
Joseph
that
Boomer's
part.
mom.
I don't remember anything from my past from whatever before I woke up in the Hills of Eyes, but I'll do anything for Holly.
I kind of get it because like he's gone through like a massive character development where like he's not defined by his past. He's not defined by the people that have made him.
Hmm.
He wants to move forward as just Shosuke, a man born from the soil. And I did like that panel when he's like my memories, my very first memories. They began when I opened my eyes under the soil of the wall eyes. He's like, I'm not Josefume nor Kira. I am the one that came from the soil, Josuke. And like, I almost teared up when I read that because like that's it goes, it just ties everything all together. A man who was born searching for his identity has found his born identity.
I mean, he can't really like go to her and be like, "I'm your son," even though I look nothing like him, really. So it's kind of that weird spot too, I guess.
Hmm.
Just maybe like write her a note or something.
No lie, like that chapter where Holly saves Josuke, that was a very emotional chapter. I felt like that's definitely one of the best chapters in Jojolion, where he's like, I may not be Kira, I may not remember who you are, but you're still my mother, and I have an obligation to save you.
Yeah, it was like he was doing it for Kira almost.
Hmm. I just think it's more like that Joestar spirit, even though he may not identify Holly as his mom, which I still think he still does. I still think like he still views Holly as his mom. He's still doing it because he has that noble heart of a Joestar. Then we get then we get photos of Joseph Boomer when he was young.
Yeah, with the reveal that like his mom has been looking this whole time for him.
Hmm. Even though his mom was kind of a deadbeat mom, if you remember the chapter.
I don't remember, but that's very funny.
Basically, long story short, his mom was like a deadbeat mom, like didn't really care about Josefume.
Hmm.
She got pregnant at an early age and was like, fuck having a kid, I'm gonna party. And then Josefume almost drowns. And she didn't care that Josefume drowned. Then Josuke had to be saved by Kira and Holly.
That's right. Yeah. After seeing Josefume's mom, we see Josuke and Yashiro get walking, and then Josuke talks about his where he got his name from, and it was from Joseph Joestar. Back in that flashback, he saw a sandal while carrying Lucy. On that sandal, it said his name, so that's why he has that name. It's like name your grandson after the sandal I saw that one time while carrying this woman who's dying. Kind of
It-
random, but
It's I don't know, it's touching. I think it's a bit touching.
is
I don't know,
it?
it's like that whole like attraction theory. I mean, you do realize that Josefume and Kira, despite them before the fusion, they were still related to each other in some way.
Well, I'm not saying about that. I'm just saying naming your someone after something you saw on a sandal is kind of silly.
Just wait until it happens to you, Chris. You're gonna like be on the beach one day. You're gonna receive a note in the bottom, be like, "Name your son Josefume."
Not even
You're
my
gonna be like,
son, my grandson.
"Oh, name your son, name your grandson Josefume." You're gonna be like, "Oh, that's a good idea."
All right, so then they head over to the fruit parlor, or is that like a
Yep,
cake store?
that was a fruit
All
parlor,
right, I
but
don't
they
remember
they also,
since it's been a while since we've been there.
a fruit parlor can make cakes. Chris, come on,
I know, I just didn't
you
know that
close,
they were
you
cake
close-minded
makers.
individual.
I thought like everyone's like, oh yeah, we're having a party right now, even though it's celebrate our dad's getting released from the hospital. He doesn't get
Like,
released until tomorrow, but we'll party now.
which I found to be very awkward. I'm like, how do you throw a party without the person?
I think it was pick a cake so he can have it
Oh, okay.
tomorrow. But
Okay.
yeah, definitely that's what I first thought. Like, oh, we're having a party
Okay,
today without him.
that makes much more sense. 'Cause, like,
Josuke, pick a cake.
That's the real battle. This is the real final battle. Picking the cake. I like how Mitsuba's there, even though she caused so much shit to happen. She almost killed Yasuho. You know, she's wife was Jobin, so she has some malicious intent.
Hey, it's all about family. You forgive your family, except Jobin. You can't forgive him. Even if they
You
have
can't,
baby arms, they're still family.
you can't turn your back on family. I thought it was very touching. The very end, when they're like, "Pick a cake," you know, come on, Josuke, pick a damn cake. It's just like even Joshu was like, come on, Josuke, pick one."
Did you
Which
like that
is,
he still had his baby arm?
yeah, I still found it to be funny. And this is good arm, and this is like good arm, so he can't masturbate with his good arm.
He
He can't
can't
reach.
reach.
The final panel, we see Yashua walking out of the food parlor. You know, she sees the scene of Josuke with his new family. I just found it to be very touching. All this time he was looking for a family. And even in the first couple of chapters of Jojolion, or maybe not even the first couple of Jojolion, he always mentioned it. He wonders what it feels like to be in a family. Like, how does it feel to be accepted, belonging as a family member? And so he finally gets a family, and they accept him as a family member. Even like I said, Joshu, who hated his guts since day one, is like, Josuke, pick a cake. You're part of this family. Like, pick the right one for dad.
Oh, okay. I did not get that. What does this have to do with anything? Why we care about a cake for like 5 pages? But that makes a lot more sense.
See, we help each other. We help each other out understand this
Hmm.
final chapter. It's basically like, yeah, like they're picking out a cake for dad. Like, which one would he love the most?
Yeah.
The fact that they're allowing Josuke to pick the cake just shows that he is part of the family now. Like,
Yeah,
and I can
definitely.
let some, and I can let a random stranger pick a cake for your dad. And that's the end, basically. That is Jojolion in its entire. All right, Jojolion, what an adventure! A tale of mystery, identity, family, and race wars. What is your review of the chapter, Chris?
Well, last week I was pretty down on the whole Radio Gaga incident part of it.
Hmm.
I thought that seeing that was Joseph at the beginning and kind of getting more like insight on the family was nice, even though it didn't really tie into the Part 9 actual characters or story much. And the family stuff at the end was nice to see, like you said, but we didn't really get much closure for these characters, I feel. And that could be because when we get into speculation, but I feel like part 9 will be these characters again, but we'll see. It will be time, only time will tell for that. A 7 out of 10.
Okay, solid, solid. The way I envisioned this chapter to be, it wasn't going to contain any information on Part 9. If anything, Araki will just drop a few little hints, but he's not going to tell us who the next JoJo is, the next location, or the setting. So, my review of this chapter, I did enjoy the fan service with Joseph Joestar, Hermit Purple, and Araki's classic endings with his character death. Like, oh yeah, Lucy Steele died at age 65, and she's now in prison. But like, I do agree with you. Like, I don't think it was like sleeping slaves kind of symbolic, but it was nice. It was touching. We learned a little bit more about the Joestar family, but it did still feel a little bit out of place in terms of like it being at the very end. I did enjoy the very end with the food parlor. Like, even though it was not the ending I envisioned it to be, I wanted to see more emotions, as in like they're crying over Joban, Narusuke if he was dead, or just kind of being like hopeful that he was going to be alive. Because I felt like Narusuke just being like, oh yeah, he's gonna be okay. He's gonna be discharged the next day. I just felt like that was kind of rushed a bit.
Honestly, I feel like they should have just had them doing the party or doing the celebration there with
Yeah,
him.
I definitely agree. Like, but I did like the cake moment. I did like
Hmm.
when they're deciding which cake is suitable for Nosuke. It kind of whole tied back to what I said, like Josuke find out who he is and find a place where he belongs. So overall, this chapter, I'm gonna give it a point 8 out of 10.
Nice.
So we're kind of in agreement. Like it's kind of between the 7 and 8. Definitely think Iraqi, if he actually like took his time to kind of like plan it out, he can give us a solid ending. But he kind of just always like, I wouldn't say he fumbles. He just The thing with Iraqi, he has a lot of great ideas. It's just hard for him to kind of like close it all together at the very end.
Maybe he's always
Yeah.
like thinking like, what's the next thing I will be
hmm
doing, and not like, how should I give these characters a meaningful ending?
hmm Because like I think the way he just always ends it is just like the character story is like is the character story is done, but the characters themselves are not done. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
Because maybe the way like he ended it, I think he kind of wanted it to tie towards part 9. I do believe that Josuke will return in part 9.
Based on just some clues from this chapter, it
hmm
seems very likely that they will be going to different locations trying to look for the fruit.
hmm But yeah, this part 8 was entirely the story of Josuke about him finding his identity, and actually once he found that identity, what's he gonna make out of it? Like, will he be Kira or Josefume, or will he be his own person? And I think would be a very appropriate time to judge Part A as a whole. Overall, what's your final review of Part 8? And I think it's take into consideration that if we were reading this monthly, because I think it would be a different experience if we had Part 8 to binge right off the bat.
Yeah, reading it monthly is definitely a different experience for me. While reading this part, I've said to you that I didn't really care reading it monthly,
hmm
especially with the this last arc that was going on. It felt like it was going on forever and ever. A day until the Rokakuga's done, and it's 30 chapters of that or whatever. It just seemed like it was taking a long time for anything to really happen during that time.
hmm
But overall, I did enjoy the mystery at the beginning. Like, who is this guy who was in the dirt in the Hills of Eyes? Like, I was curious about that at the beginning. But after like the rock human stuff, I kind of fell off. Like, my enjoyment just seemed a little too silly for me. And then the Rokaka stuff at the end, definitely not really a fan of that. A lot of those, I feel like a lot of those rock humans as well didn't really get much development. Toro didn't super feel like a final villain. Even you were saying in chapter 108, is this the end? Are we going to have more? Who is the true villain kind of thing? We would go back and forth with that. So I would give this a 6 out of 10.
Ooh.
I didn't really care for this part that much.
Interesting take. Interesting. There's some things I do agree with you. There's some things I disagree with you. I did like the way it opened up. I did. If anything, part 8, I loved how it started off with figuring out who JoJo was instead of us just knowing right off the bat. Oh, this is our new JoJo. Here's his stand. Here's what it can do. It just kind of like was piece by piece trying to uncover who he was. Because we didn't know exactly where he sat on the timeline, on the family tree. My bad.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the part I really enjoyed, like going on little mystery, bit by bit, chapter by chapter, kind of find out more clues. One of the chapters that I enjoyed at the beginning was the lemon and tangerine chapter, where Josuke finds out a bit more of who he is, where he goes to the Higakasha's land, and his sister Kai, which at the time he didn't know was his sister, plants an orange tangerine. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna show you something very shocking. You are actually two individuals in one person, not just one person in general, which adds more deeper to the mystery. And that aspect where he's slowly uncovering his identity and it gets more convoluted as it goes on. Then you're like, who's Kira? Who's Josefume? Which leads to the vitamin C arc with the rock human, Damo, and he's like I killed you before, Josuke. Like I'm gonna kill you again. I killed your past selves. That arc was really beautiful. I think that's definitely one of Araki's best arcs in the history of JoJo. So that climax of the vitamin C arc, I mean, that could have been the ending of part eight. If I have to be honest, it was just a very solid arc. But obviously, we still had the rock humans to deal with. And the thing about the rock humans, when they were introduced, they gave out very cryptic messages saying like, "Oh, like Josuke, we know more than you. We know who you truly are." And you're like, "How does Josuke, Jobin relate to the rock humans? Who are they? What do they want?" After the Vitamin C arc, that's where I feel like it kind of loses some of its momentum because you have that awesome climax with the Vitamin C arc. So you need some sort of arc that kind of slows it down. And we get the randomest arc, which is the Milagro Man arc. Remember that one?
Which one was that?
It's the one with Josuke, if he finds out the infinite money glitch.
Oh, yes.
Sorry, Jashu. Jashu.
Yeah, I remember that one.
That was just so out of place. Like you can definitely remove those. It's just like a filler. It definitely is a filler arc.
Kind of reminded me of that one part 4 chapter or episode where that random guy in the power lines
Oh yeah.
just reminded me. This feels like filler.
That arc and along with like leading up to basically the Wonder of View arc, it kind of slows down just a little bit. I did like the urban gorilla fight. That was pretty interesting because when we get introduced to Mamazuku, Yashua being well, she's always been a team player, but she kind of like has her moment to shine as well. But the poor Tom arc was pretty good. The poor Tom arc, leading everything up to leading the poor Tom was kind of slow, but poor Tom was just fantastic. It's you have a very Jobin gets duped, allows this dangerous stand attack the Higashira's household, and it all ends up with the branch being lost, and Josuke like basically gets the biggest out in the history of JoJo. So I thought it was really beautiful, but the hospital arc with Wu Tomaki and everything leading up to kind of like I would say like the first couple of chapters of the Wonder of You arc were definitely slow because we had no idea like what's going on, like what's this mysterious stand attacking them, who's Yashua's boyfriend? If we don't have a final villain, is it going to be a rock human? Is it going to be Jobin?
Mm-hmm.
I honestly think the Wonder of You arc wasn't that bad. It's just it dragged out longer than we hoped it did just because it was monthly.
I also
And yes,
feel like it was a lot of just waiting, characters waiting around. It makes sense for the Wonder of You because you can't really do anything, but it was just a lot of waiting around for characters, like who's going to make the first move kind of thing,
hmm
which isn't very interesting to read, especially monthly when nothing happens in a chapter, really.
oh yeah, there was some chapters where like it definitely nobody made any like it's basically like playing chess where like you need a timer. No one's making a move. You gotta start implementing a timer to force players to make moves.
Plus, there was like a moment where Yasuho was dying for 5 chapters or something. It's like,
Best
oh,
arc.
will
That's the
she
best arc.
die?
That's the
Nope.
best arc. So I honestly thought it wasn't that bad. The Wonder of You arc.
It might be
I'm
better reading it, like binging it, but reading it the way we did monthly,
mm,
it definitely wore on me after a while.
I think it's definitely a arc that definitely requires you to binge it slash watch it as well.
Yeah, hopefully the anime can do multiple chapters per
Mhm.
episode and make the pacing up, pick it up a little bit.
Mhm. I do agree with you that I dislike the how Toru was handled. Toru definitely needed more work in terms of character development. I do understand that Toru's motivation, well, his motivations are money and
Mm-hmm.
power, where he wants to flip the current power structure so that the elite, the people in power, bow down to him, where like he can offer this immortality gift to them in exchange for money and power.
I guess for someone who's been alive for so long. He's sure taking his time for this dream or his goal. He wasn't even close to it during this part.
I think a part of it comes down to the rock human anatomy, because he did mention how he tried to pitch ideas to different companies, but they rejected him because he was young looking.
That makes sense. And if you wear a costume like that into an interview, I don't know if anyone will give you money.
He should have just like he should have just like triggered one of the review and was like, "You making fun of me for my age?"
Or like,
But it's
since the head doctor is an actual doctor at the place, right?
Mhm.
He like speaks and stuff to crowds of people. So why not just have the head doctor be your person?
I think at the point Toru was finalizing his plan because he presented the that like vital of Wakaka juice.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, this is my new invention. Like, it's gonna be out in the market soon. It's remember, like he was trying to finalize the fruit, and he just stole the branch from Josuke. So I think like he definitely was finalizing the final stages of his plan. I just wish there was more time and more chapters dedicated to Toru's and his motivation, his intention. All we needed was probably like a chapter or two having a bit of flashbacks and a bit of monologuing from him to kind of solidify him as like the main antagonist.
We did get the rock humans, how they are born with like the bee and the like different animals they inhabit until they are able to grow up.
Mhm.
But I feel like having more Toro's thing, other than we did get a flashback with Yashiho and him, but I feel like having more of just this is Toro and this is what he wants to do, like his goal, would
Especially
have
where
been
like
better.
especially with him trying to kind of topside society and having like a huge discrimination towards humanity. I would love to see more of him kind of going in depth why he wants to benefit his race, his people. Like, I don't know, just have a chapter of him like being discriminated against for being a rock human.
When he was introduced, he's this guy working at the hospital.
Hmm.
It didn't really seem like he was discriminated against. He's just racist against humans just because they did something to other people. We don't really know why he hates humans really.
Or even if it isn't his nature, where like he is his species are parasites.
Hmm.
His species are just like inhumane. Like even though they are called rock humans, I would love to see just Toru kind of like feeding off society. And I know he kind of did that by stealing the doctor's identity, kind of using Yasuho, gaslighting her, all that shit. I still would have loved to see him like a bit more just being a total dick.
Yeah, let's see more of like his motivations
Hmm.
because we do get a backstory of one of the rock humans, how like they had a girlfriend and then he went into hibernation and then she sold all his stuff. That's why he didn't like humans. But like for Turo, we don't really get that kind of backstory for him.
Hmm. Especially when he seemed to have like some sort of beef with Josuke right off the bat. He was definitely not, I wouldn't say afraid, but like he definitely knew how dangerous Josuke was. So right off the bat, they had some sort of beef with each other because you could tell that the two of them did not trust each other when they first met, especially when he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm Yashuo's ex-boyfriend." So I thought it was just a very lost opportunity by Rocky's part for not having any sort of fight between the two of them and any sort of like shit talking basically between the two.
That is true. Maybe it's just because Wonder Review it doesn't really isn't really a fighting stand in that way as
Hmm.
other JoJo type fights go. So you can't really do it. But I guess Josuke did like shoot him with his bubble power.
Go beyond.
Yes.
That's what I felt like it was a very lost opportunity in terms of like Araki kind of handling Toru and Wonder Review arc. It did feel a little bit rushed at the end, especially back in the chapter 108 review that we did, we were still a little bit skeptical of whether this is like the second to last arc or there's going to be a new arc after that, after the Wonder View. I think the way Jisaraki kind of handled the past couple of chapters, he could have handled it better.
I agree. Do you think it would have been better if we didn't get that flashback? Or if we got it at a different time during this part and got more character development or closure?
I feel like, in terms of the Radio Gaga incident, it does not beat Sleeping Slaves. I was kind of hoping it to kind of tie back to Jojolion in terms of a theme.
Same. That's also one for O as well. That's also I also wanted to bring up maybe there's it's gonna tie into part nine somehow because it
Hmm.
just felt so random, like and not really connected much other than like these characters are related. Hey, and here's alternate world Joseph Joestar. It just seemed I don't know. I'm curious if it will tie into anything in the future.
It was nice. I definitely like the, again, the fan service slash it giving more depth to the family tree. I just felt like it should have served as a flashback earlier. Maybe have Araki kind of open up each chapter with the flashback slash Radio Gaga chapter.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely other ways he could have
Mhm.
introduced this if he wanted to give us this information.
Similar to how Oda does like the One Piece like cover arts, where like he introduces like a snippets of a story,
Oh yeah, I'm.
or
It's sad
kind
that
of like,
like no one else really does that. Like you can like do like mini arcs in just the cover alone.
yeah, slash like Breaking Bad, where like Breaking Bad opens up like an episode with like a flash forward or flashback.
Hmm.
I felt like if Araki would have opened each chapter of the Wonder of You arc with the Radio Gaga incident, just a page or two of like Lucy Steele traveling to Japan, ultimately meeting up with Joseph Fume, I think it would have worked better than just having it introduced at the very last second.
Yeah, it'd been interesting to see that instead.
I did like the ending where Josuke finally accepted who he was. And it's like, I am, from this day forward, I am now Josuke number 8 of part 8, Jojolion. And just the wonderful touching moment with the family. And they're like, oh yeah, Josuke, pick a cake. You're one of us now.
Hmm.
Again, I still feel like the last couple of chapters were definitely rushed. I did like the way it ended with the family, accepting Josuke and just having him pick a cake. It's very touching. However, the Ryokaga incident, despite it being good, felt out of place. As a whole, Jojolion is still on my ranking. I'm gonna give it. This is me just saying this on the spot. It can change if I do an official ranking tier list of the JoJo parts. It's definitely within the top 4 for me. The reason being, I did like Josuke as a character, his character development. The supporting characters were all great, from Yasuho to Mamazuku, Norusuke, Joban, even some of the rock humans. I really enjoyed the villains we had. To, Toru's debatable, but I did like him in some aspects. Joban, the architect guy, poor Tom. I did enjoy how the fights were more natural. It's not like we had a fight every week where it's like, oh, random bad guy number 7 comes in. The fight just felt more organically natural due to just like conflict happening. And there was definitely several highlights throughout the part where it's very dramatic. If anything, I gotta give to Julian a lot of effort for its drama. It it was like a beautiful like Greek tragedy where it's just like a lot of drama was happening, a lot of conflict was happening. Oh, Jobin just killed his dad off. Oh, Jobin's doing some shady stuff. Oh, Josuke saving his mom. That's why I really enjoyed part 8. It's just like a lot of drama. What do you think, Chris?
Like I said before, I didn't super care for this one after a certain point.
Mm-hmm.
So this is definitely in the bottom tier of JoJo parts for me. A thing I really miss in this part is the JoJo supporting cast, JoJo's friends. There wasn't really, except for Yashiho, there wasn't really anyone too exciting for me compared to other parts. I guess this part felt more grounded in a way, like in terms of more like wacky characters, like the wacky friend character type of thing.
Yeah. Very interesting takes, Chris. I like how you and I have a difference of opinions. It's interesting to hear your take on why you didn't really care for this part. I'm really excited to see what they're gonna do, what Araki's gonna do with part nine, if it is part nine. Because I don't think he officially declared it part yet.
I mean, this part ended, so it's part
Yeah.
9.
Well, it's been a. I still can't believe it. It's the end of Jojolion. I don't. I couldn't. I can't believe we finally made it here. I thought Jojolion still had 2 more years of it running, but we're finally here at the end of Jojolion. I don't think you and I were expecting Jojolion to end this year. It's been a wild ride. We just started reviewing these chapters, but I can't wait to come back and review part 9 when it begins. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been the Logpose Lounge. Tune in next time when we speculate what part 9 will be about and whether or not Jobin will come back.
Nope, never coming back.
Subscribe for more JoJo episodes because that's all we do now.